Welcome back to Contemporary Business, and I'm your host, Ivor Blumenthal, and I like talking to interesting people. The person I'm chatting to now is Joanne Martin, who is the head of the Kensington Road Closure Forum. Joanne, thank you so much for joining me here on Contemporary Business.
Thank you, Ava.
So, who is Joanne Martin?
I'm a mom, obviously, a family, been married for a long time. Decided to join the world of real estate in 2006. Started selling within Kensington and didn't really like the suburb at the time, I must be honest. And then it sort of grew on me and really fell in love with it.
When you
And
when you
moved
when you when you first saw it, what didn't you like about the suburb?
because we were living in Oak Dean, so the homes were really different. So for me, it was more about the older homes and the smaller plots. And that's really what I didn't seem to understand why people would love living in older homes that were built in the early, 1900s. And it didn't take me long, to be honest. I was here for about a year or two and then started falling in love with the homes and saw how some people had changed them and modernized them. And then I realized what a superb community it was and what a great environment it was to live in. The older suburb with the trees and nature and yeah, I don't know. It just crept in my heart. It really did creep into my heart, and the neighborliness. You knew who your neighbors were. In Kensington, somehow you spoke to your neighbors. There was more interaction with neighbors. It was a lot quieter as well. It's just an amazing suburb, and people were walking around in the suburb. They really loved their suburb. So, walking in the suburb, walking the dogs, you saw children in the suburb.
Is that still your experience of Kensington?
Well, I think it's changed slightly, but with time, I do see a lot of people still walking in the suburb. Um, People are living on a faster pace now, so it is changing a little bit. But there is still that family. Well, I'd love to get it back to where it was, and that's the whole idea of trying to close off the suburb to bring the community back together because it certainly lends itself to it.
So I previously, having been a city councillor and also having been in the banking sector, I know about this concept of redlining a suburb. The idea that the banks would consider a high risk suburb a redlined area and therefore would either not give bonds or would give very expensive bonds with very constrained criteria for fulfillment. And as far as the council is concerned, I know firsthand from having been a city councillor in Johannesburg that there is a tendency to strangle areas which are considered to be red line areas, possibly because rates and taxes are not being paid, and really to strangle the supply of services to those areas in favor of the areas that were paying their rates and taxes or had a better, let's call it credit history or behavioral history, etc. Is Kensington a red line suburb?
Well, there's certain sections of Kensington that are being redlined. Yes, definitely. Um, so there was a time that in certain suburbs, particularly Malvern and the outer skirts of Belgravia, and that where the banks wouldn't even consider giving bonds until until they said it was discriminatory. So where people who couldn't afford living in other suburbs and wanted to buy the cheaper homes within Malvern and that needed the bonds. So that's where the red lining and the grey lining came in, exactly what you were saying. So where maybe the banks would do a risk analysis because they're not allowed to say we can't give you a bond, but they would look at what the risk would be and only grant maybe a 70% bond or an 80% bond. So in the areas that are redlined, it is more difficult to get a 100% bond, 100%. And you would be charged a higher interest rate. So they do look very carefully at the risk within a suburb. So there are the outer line sections, there are sections of Kensington that are being redlined, and the banks would cautiously look at where and how much they would be prepared to loan.
And as far as the municipality is concerned, look, I drive around Kensington quite regularly, and I'm shocked to see the number of potholes in the main tributaries around Kensington. I'm shocked to see the state of the pavements, to see the absolute dereliction of service when it comes to cleaning the areas, etc., the state of the robots. Uh, does council justify its constriction of services to Kensington in any way when you, as estate agents, or in fact as the Kensington Forum, engage with council? What do they say about the quality of their services?
Well, it's the usual excuses. We don't have the budget, or they don't have the manpower, or they can't really keep up with the infrastructure being torn apart. So if they do fix the traffic lights, then it's a week or two later they come down and they do steal the cables again, or the car, or the SIM cards, or the infrastructure. So they cannot keep up with the amount of destruction that is going into the infrastructure via theft. Um,
But
if
that doesn't excuse things like potholes, for
the
example,
potholes,
and the
yes.
state of the pavement.
So, Ivo, I must be honest. So, with all the years that I've been, they have worked on a thing that the potholes need to be reported. Okay, so it's about managing to find the correct people within COJ, and to constantly remind them that they need to come and fill up the potholes. Unfortunately, there isn't that system where they're going to be driving around and looking for the potholes. If the pothole's not being reported, it's not going to be filled. So I Yes, is it any different in Kensington compared to any other areas? I don't know, and I don't think so, because I do know that a lot of the suburbs have taken it upon themselves to actually fix up the potholes, or maybe they have a system of reporting it.
And what about your councillor? Do you have an effective councillor in Kensington?
They work hard, but I do feel sometimes they don't come to the party as they should. So that is just my personal opinion.
Right.
And maybe because I work very closely with council, and I have a lot of initiatives where we have made and we have built relationships with council. And I do find that if we can just get to not upper management, but maybe middle management and the working people, we can get council to work for us. But it is a huge task to take on. So yes, we all do have an opinion. I do have an opinion that I feel that if the councillor drove around and just took an account of the potholes and made a note and went to Crum, or went to whoever our representative is at Crum, who I do know is Patrick, and said to him, we have 55 potholes. These are the streets. I can give you the exact locations. When can you as council come through? I do believe if we tried that and we did that, we would certainly have the COJ accountable, and we would certainly have them come in and do it.
Just for our listeners, what is Crum?
Crum is all right. So let me think of the wording carefully. So Crum is an organisation that has been created for each ward, so that if you find that JRA or City Power or whoever are not doing what they should be, you can go to Crum and they can make those departments accountable for what is happening in your suburb.
Okay, fair enough. So, Joanne, I'm talking to Joanne Martins, who is the head of the Kensington Road Closure, or the Suburb Closure Forum.
One of them, yeah. Anyway,
You're the
yeah.
chairperson. What is it that you want to do in Kensington?
So it started off with just wanting to close a small section within our suburb, so 3 or 4 streets, and then people started hearing about it, and the outcry got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I mean, if I could, I would close off the whole of Kensington just to protect our suburb. And I feel so it's not only from a crime perspective, it is about saving the culture of Kensington, making people fall in love with their suburb, feeling comfortable being in their suburb, because I feel once people are comfortable and content where they live in, they will start looking after their suburb. It will bloom over and you'll get this positive energy, and it will be family orientated again, and people will be feeling free to walk around and keep their suburb, because it's all good sitting back and complaining and complaining and complaining and doing nothing about it. So if we close off our suburb, we'll be able to protect our infrastructure, which is very important. We will be able to take control of our streets and be able to be aware of what is happening. And as a team, so rather just Joanne on her own going to the council and complaining, if we go, this is our community and we want our streets to be fixed, speaking in numbers, and it will definitely make a difference. So that's my vision. So I really feel that if we can pull the community together, and that's why I want to do the enclosure. I mean, it is for security. It is to safeguard our value of our homes, definitely, because now it's like fighting a war, as you had said in the beginning. People are not confident about Kensington and where it's going because it's not looking clean and it's not looking tidy. But if we can get people just to work together and we close off the suburb and we now feel secure where we're living and we start loving where we live again, surely we're going to have a turnaround. First of all, insurance will come down because it's lower risk. Our infrastructure is intact. So we do have electricity and we don't have little water, our meters being tampered with because they're stealing the brass parts from our meters, because now we're taking control of our environment. So that alone, from the people living at home, living in your home, if you're happy where you're living, it's going to bloom out and it's going to show. And I truly believe that people will start falling in love with their suburb and it will start looking great again. So that's my vision.
The way you describe it is absolutely idyllic. So what's getting in the way of it happening? What is it contingent on? And why is it such an uphill battle to do what is absolutely logical the way you explain it?
And I think it's such a minimum price. I really cannot see it. I don't understand what the reluctance is. So I find that a lot of the time the people in Kensington love complaining, but they don't put their words into action. When you give them platforms and you give them opportunity to take back their suburb, they just don't do it. I don't understand why. And that is the difficulty. The difficulty is just getting people to commit.
So let's talk about that commitment. What is it? Let's first look at the numbers, the percentages. For a road to be incorporated into the Kensington suburb closure plan, what percentage of owners would have to agree to the closure?
So we need at least 72% of owners to agree to the closure.
And the people who rent and the people who work in the area, do they also have a say?
They do have a say, 100% they do have a say. They need to agree as well. Everybody has a say. And they do want it. So if you do go into the streets, the people that are renting and the people that do work in the suburbs do want it. They do want it.
Do you think the reluctance is about what people think they're going to have to pay as an initial fee and then as an ongoing, let's call it levy?
100%, because they have, yes, that is one of it. So they for some reason don't see the bigger picture. And I do understand the fact that we pay in rates and we should make COJ accountable. But can we do it? We just cannot do it. We found it. They've proven that that they can't do it. And I'm just saying, yes, we do pay rates. So that's the reluctance. They're saying, why should we pay more when we're paying so much rates? Why should we pay more to secure our suburb? And I'm going, well, just look at it. What will happen if you don't do it? We're already losing 25 to 30% of the value of our homes. For what we're paying to enclose the suburb, that's a small number. It's a no-brainer. What you will save on your insurance is a no-brainer. And the fact is, if you can sleep comfortably at night and you know your infrastructure is intact, it's great. Or wake up in the morning and go, I don't have electricity, or my water's not working, or JRA is going to take 48 hours to come and replace my water meter that they've just stolen from. That's the reality of it.
What is it that you've calculated the average household will have to pay as a levy to maintain a suburb closure?
So we've worked it out to about 350 Rand a month, and that's taking into account that only 70% of the people will pay. So imagine if 90% of the people had to pay. For 350 Rand a month, we are having such uphill.
Do you think people are actually understanding the brass tacks of what it is you're proposing to object to 350 Rand a month when their property values are de-escalating the way they're de-escalating, when their services are non-existent, when everything is getting stolen left, right, and center, even after it's being repaired? And 350 Rand per household will stop that, or at least manage and control it from happening. Do you think people actually understand the brass tacks of what you're proposing?
I wish I had the answer. I don't know. And even with a once-off fee of maybe 1,500 Rand per household, just to get the infrastructure up and running. I don't know. Do they have a fear that someone's going to be making money out of this? I actually don't understand. I really do not understand. Because right now, with the infrastructure being stolen the way it is, any person with a common business sense knows that if you have so much theft, you're not running a successful business. And we know that. I mean, we see it on our groups. They fix the cable. 2 weeks later, that same cable is stolen. So anyone with a common business sense needs to understand that that kind of any company that's putting in money when infrastructure has been stolen like that is not going to be a successful business. They are not going to have money.
Do you have a take? Do you have an idea of what percentages of properties in Kensington are in fact rented out?
I don't.
If you had
What?
to guess.
There are still more residents than tenants. So I would say probably about 35%, maybe 35.
And is it possible that 35% that are owned by people who are either investors or live elsewhere and rent their properties in Kensington out, do you think that the apathy and possibly the rejection of the notion of suburb closure is because these people have lost contact and the feel of what's actually happening in Kensington at this moment in time, or maybe are completely disinterested?
There are some of them that are definitely disinterested and they just look at it as being a business. Yeah, I would have to agree with you there. As sad as it is, yeah. They're just worried about making the money because, yes, we do have a breeding of slumlords coming into the area. So they make a lot of money. They make a huge return on their property with bare minimum maintenance and offering really very little to the tenants that are renting, because we have such a little, because they want to be living close to where they work. So we don't have that affordable housing for people living close to work. And yes, we do have a breeding of slumlords, and they really don't care. They don't look after their properties. They don't care about how they live. And yes, I have to say, in my experience, even with the properties, because I do get called in every now and then to sell those properties, especially if they've been bonded way too high. because also with the risk of that kind of tenant, they don't always pay. And 90% of the time, they don't pay their rates.
How do you control slumlords? I mean, how do you control the
Question.
overpopulation of premises? So if a premise is zoned, for argument's sake, for 8 people and there are 20 people living in the premises, is there any will by council to want to enforce regulations which may affect?
It's you need such a good know-how, and I always say it's so typical of law. You miss out one step and it just falls through the cracks and there's nothing that you can do.
Hmm.
And it's just, there isn't a clear cut explanation through the council to understand how to handle these kind of problems, I must be honest. So you will try building control. Building control will say, this is as much as I can do. You have to go to legal. And then you go to legal and they go, but we don't quite know what to do. You need to report it to JMPD first. So you have this total between, and it's been a complaint of mine with many times when I do go to council and say, there is a lack of communication between the different departments in council. So they have very exclusive departments which do specific tasks. But once they've reached what they can do, they don't pass on the information to the next one. And they expect people like me or whoever to know exactly what to do. And we don't know, but they don't really know either. So and this is what I've said, there is no communication between the different departments. And Crumb is supposed to fill in that gap. But even when we do speak to them, they don't seem to know the procedure where to go. So JMPD goes, okay, we can do this much. Building control goes, we do this much. But how do we bridge it over to the other companies? So that's where I find that's why people like slumlords get away with what they do.
So is Kensington as a suburb going to be affected by a closure or not? Is it going to manage to close itself off and to actually manage who comes into the area, how they are observed within the area, the level of armed response, etc., etc.? Or in fact, is this project not going to become successful?
Well, we're hanging in there, but I don't give up very easily, Evil. I really don't. So I will give it. We have to get it done. If we don't get it done, then I don't know what's going to happen to our suburb. Then we might as well just all put our houses on the market and go. And I'll be honest with you, if you really walk the streets, and this is what I don't understand why people don't fight for their suburbs. Even if you take one street at a time, there may be 2 bad apples or 3 bad apples in a street of 50 houses. But the 37 people allow those 3 bad apples to take over their lives. They run and run instead of standing together. Okay, maybe they say we're a middle-class suburb. Okay, we might not have the huge financial backup of a lot of wealthier suburbs, northern suburbs or whatever suburbs, but we certainly have the manpower if we just stuck together as a community. And I promise you, if we get this right, well, Joburg will certainly know who we are.
I would imagine, as a parting shot of this discussion, I would imagine that even if there are 50 roads and 5 of them can't be included, the ones that can't be included need to understand that unless there's a critical mass of support from each particular road, the inclusion of them endangers the entire project.
100%, 100%. So I don't understand the lack of trust amongst people. So yes, so as we should do, as we should be able to do through social media and through WhatsApp, get it all done. There's still a huge amount of a lack of trust. So it still has to be done face to face. So you need to meet people and you need to build the trust. But we really need to get our community back together.
What's your parting shot to residents of Kensington?
Yo, get off your high horses, sign the consent forms, let's get this done, let's show the rest of the world how easy it actually is to do.